Okay, so the meeting's recording. We need to start off with the election of the chair and vice chair. So are there any nominations for chair and vice chair at this time? Councillor Vanderstel.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I respectfully nominate Councillor Greg Martin for chair.
Councillor Martin, do you accept the nomination?
No, I'll nominate Councillor McCurry.
Councillor McCurry, do you accept the nomination?
Sure.
Great. Are there any other nominations for chair? Seeing none, I'll call the vote for the election of the chair for Councillor McCurry. All those in favor? Could I get the mayor and just Councillor McCurry just to say yes or no? Perfect. All right, carry. So Councillor McCreary, the chair is yours if you want to conduct the election for the vice chair.
Thank you, Mr. Gauthier. Nominations for vice chair. Let's go. Mayor, do you have a nomination for vice chair?
Yeah, how about Councillor Martin or
Councillor Martin, do you accept that?
Whoever will accept it.
Councillor Martin, do you accept that?
Yes, I accept that with thanks to both of my nominators.
And we'll close nominations for that position. If somebody would like to move that. Councillor Vanderstel, thank you. Mayor, thank you. That's all in favor. That carries. Councillor Martin, congratulations or condolences as the case may be. So we will now forge ahead. I'd ordinarily read all that stuff that we read at the start of every meeting. But you all know what it is. So unless Chris has any objections, we'll just forge ahead. So let me get a mover and seconder for everything that's on our agenda today, guys. Moved by Councillor Vanderstel, seconded by Councillor Martin. We only have 5-1 and 5-2, I think, today. So we're going to separate both of those. We've got a presentation today. Guys, if you'll just bear with me a second, I've got to find that. Okay, so let's see now. I'm going to ask John E. Pepper from RPL Architects to start his presentation. John, you have 10 minutes exactly for your presentation. That includes questions from members of the committee. So let me ask you to go ahead and start your presentation now, John.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Can I assume that everyone can see the presentation, that I don't need to share my own screen?
That's correct. We can see it.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Good morning. So we're here today to present some of our findings with respect to alternative development options for the Brantford Police Service building. The first slide, or the second slide rather, talks about the scope of work as was defined in the RFP, which was to expand and upgrade the current outgoing facilities to provide space for future needs. And obviously, this was to create a cost-effective long-term solution, and the project cost in the RFP was identified at about $39 million. Next slide. So some of the project background was looking at the total number of future anticipated staff in the RFP that was identified as 420 people. When we did our own second needs assessment process with the police service, we came up with a slightly different number, but that really wouldn't have a whole lot of effect on space requirements. Most of that additional space would be for patrol officers and locker space. However, we did find that the total space requirements when we went through our study were greater than was identified in the RFP. And the reasons for that was we felt that our findings were that the communication center needed to be larger, the forensic identification labs needed to be larger, more space was required for police operations, particularly uniform patrol, And there was a need for a 50-meter firing range, which was significantly larger than the existing range in the current building. Looking at the most appropriate renovation and expansion option, our estimates in the pre-design report came up to 53.6 million. This was because more new construction was required. Assumptions made previously regarding the ability to renovate the forensic labs, the detention area, and the firing range turned out to require new construction. So those aspects drove up the estimated construction costs significantly. So obviously this raised some concerns with respect to the cost difference between the initial expectations and what the estimates came in at. So next slide. We were asked to look at a number of different development options. This slide here shows the options that were presented in the pre-design report. Two different ways of expanding the existing building with the new block shown in dark blue. And for comparison, we looked at what the cost would be to demolish the existing facility and build new. Interestingly, that solution allowed enough space for potential paramedic building on the same site while still meeting building space and parking requirements. So these are the options that were in our pre-design report submitted in the beginning of January. Next slide, please. So we were asked to look at opportunities to reduce the construction cost. One of those was to eliminate or defer the cost of the firing range, which would bring the originally estimated cost down to about $48.5 million. But then we looked at some options that we'll present here this morning. One was to reduce the scope and level of renovation of the existing building, so a variation of the originally proposed pre-design option. The second was looking at constructing a new building at the Market Street Parkade, looking at a new building on potential other available sites, the impact of decentralization and the opportunities that would provide, building over the existing building, or splitting operations to keep some operations at the Elgin Street location and moving others to a second location in close proximity. Next slide, please. So the first option we looked at was to reduce the level of renovation in the existing building. The original concept was to do an almost complete gut of the existing building and demolish some parts of it. The second option here looks at different levels of renovation in different parts of the building depending on their needs. There's no major demolition included. We have reduced the area of new construction, and we have reduced the construction cost to, including the firing range, about $41 million, or excluding the firing range, about $37.5 million. Next slide, please. Second option for comparison was to look at two different ways of redeveloping the Market Street Parkade. One was to demolish the eastern portion of the Parkade and build a new 3-level police building there. The second was to demolish the other end of the Parkade and provide a new facility, but in a different configuration. Because of land constraints and other issues, these options do not contain an indoor firing range. And we also believe it would be very difficult to accommodate a collision reporting center in the configuration that was considered appropriate and required for the new building. This costing was done at a very high level. We estimate that the construction cost could be somewhere from 49 to 54 million, offsetting the potential value of selling the Elgin Street site. The net cost could be in the order of 41 to 46 million. But I would say that these are still very high level costs. They have not been based on any particular design. or any kind of detailed estimate. Next slide, please. The third alternate was new building on available sites. So we have a similar construction cost as for the Market Street Parkade to construct according to the original scope that was identified. But if we reduce the scope slightly, as we have suggested in our first alternate, and eliminate the firing range, we could be looking at something in the order of $43 million plus the cost of land for that solution. Next slide, please. The next option was to look at decentralization, splitting operations. We looked at two different scenarios in which we felt the police service operations could be split. But because of requirements for operations concerned with public safety, those operations need to be in a building that is compliant with post-disaster structural requirements. So we have, under these scenarios, assumed that those functions, uniform patrol and things and tactical teams, would remain at Elgin Street. However, based on discussions with the police and based on our experience on looking at similar strategies for other police services, there would be considerable operational inefficiencies, loss of communication, some space and staff duplication, and increased operating costs compared to a single facility. Next slide, please. So this was looking at the potential spaces within the old City Hall and Courts building. But as you can see, it's very broken up. Having an efficient layout of whatever operations would be located in that facility would be a real challenge. But we did look at this at a very high level. The next slide, please. The next alternate was looking at building over the top of the existing building. We did not feel this was feasible. Structural challenges would be significant, particularly to meet post-disaster structural requirements and the need to resist seismic forces, and would be significantly more costly. It would also be very disruptive to punch new columns through the existing spaces to support the building above. The next alternate we looked at, alternate 6, was to split operations so that some operations would remain at Elgin Street. And because it is considered a post-disaster requirement, that would be things like uniform patrol and operations related to public safety. But similar to the City Hall option, other operations could be located to a second location somewhere in the proximity, which has not been identified. You would also, even if the building was only a few hundred meters away, you would still have the same inefficiencies and additional costs as identified in alternate 4. Next slide, please. So this summarizes the very high level costing for the different alternates. The original pre-design report and the exclusion of the firing range, those numbers can be considered fairly accurate, as can new building on an existing site, notwithstanding potential additional costs that may be assigned to a particular site for decontamination or other areas. Alternate 1, the reduced scope option, whether the firing range is in or not, we can consider those reasonably accurate numbers based on a Class D estimate by our cost consultant. However, alternates 2, 3, and 4 should be considered a range of numbers and considered a high level estimate of costing for comparison purposes, and to allow the steering committee or the task force to give us direction on how to proceed. So that was rather a quick run through of the options, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
John, thank you very much for that presentation. We've reached the end of our allotted period for the presentation, but the item is on the floor in as much as both 5.1 and 5.2 are separated for discussion. I'm going to go to steering committee members for question or comment on this item. Councillor Martin.
Thank you. In the report we got, there's a diagram showing the existing building with the new construction block 1 and block 2. And it's showing the renovations in the existing building. And it looks like the entire building's being renovated. Can that not be reduced somewhat?
That is exactly what we have proposed in our alternate
Okay.
one.
Do you have a drawing showing which areas would be left alone?
Yes, that is in slide number 6, titled 2.2, Development Alternate 1. You'll see the floor plan there is colored according to different colors. Areas that are shown in green
Okay, yeah.
would need minimal renovation, perhaps just upgrade to electrical services and some mechanical air redistribution. The areas in orange would require changes in the layout of partitions.
Yeah, that's the one I was looking at, and it seems like excessive renovations. You're saying that's the reduced option?
That's the reduced option, yes, because if we look at the investigations area, for example, the existing layout of partitions is not going to suit future operations. So partitions will have to be removed, ceilings would have to be taken down. The ductwork, the major ductwork could stay in place, but the branch distribution would have to change. Electrical services and communication services would have to be rearranged.
And what about the leadership area? It's in green. Why does that need to be touched at all?
I'm saying that that would need a very minimal amount of renovation. It may not need much more than some painting, maybe changing a couple of doors, upgrading the communication system. But it would be a very light level of renovation.
Okay. Still seems excessive to me.
Councillor, thank you. Mayor, you have the floor.
Yeah, first of all, a couple of things. Some of the people that are joining in here, they haven't changed their names. They're listed as Brantford panelists. I'd like to know who's in on this meeting. So I'm going to ask anybody that you're listed as a Brantford panelist, would you please enter your name by hitting the top right corner, please. Question for our consultant. The firing range, what's the square footage in the firing range?
Just 1 second, please. We have, I believe, 709 square meters, so about 8,000 square feet assigned to a 25-meter range and the support spaces that go along with that. A briefing area, preparation area, weapons cleaning, storage for safety equipment, storage for targets and props.
So that means expanding on what's currently there?
What's there can really not be expanded, given its structure and its current length. This would be more effective to be constructed as a new facility and the existing space used for other purposes, perhaps exhibit storage.
All right, and how much money do you save by eliminating the firing range?
If we're eliminating a 50-meter range, as was included in the pre-design report, approximately $5 million. If it was a difference between providing a 25-meter range or not, the difference would be closer to $4 million. A lot of the equipment would remain the same. It's really just the the size of the building, the concrete structure that would get larger.
Okay. And how many police station rebuilds have you been involved in?
Police station rebuilds.
Yeah, or construction of new police stations?
New construction, probably over a dozen. Recent ones include Kingston headquarters, Niagara Regional, Halton Region, Medicine Hat, which was a renovation and expansion job. Before that, Lethbridge, Alberta, Victoria, BC. We've just completed construction drawings for a large project in Moncton, New Brunswick for the RCMP. Just completed a large project for Durham Regional Police in Clarington. And the list, we've been involved as specialty police facility architects and consultants for about 35 years.
Right, and how many of those included a shooting range?
We did a shooting range in Kingston, Halton. We worked with Vancouver Police to provide a 2-range training facility that's standalone. It's separate from the existing police operations building. It's a separate building, and a firing range for Waterloo Regional.
All right. And did any of those cities have a facility similar to what we have here in Brantford, Urban Tactical, which 90% of its business is providing shooting facilities and training facilities that are excluded from the retail and is devoted to what they call agencies?
Some of them would have had at various levels of suitability and accessibility, but the decisions in all of those projects was to provide firing ranges as part of the project, including those firing ranges. Part of those projects would not have been our decision. It would have been the decision of whatever funding authority was in place at the time.
Yeah, and John, can I make
Mayor, that's time, Mayor. Thank you. Councillor Vanderstel, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to, I guess it would be John. Alternate 2, a 9,400 square meter insert into the parking garage. I'm assuming that the proximity to the entranceway is the reason why one of those 2 sites were chosen, one to the east, one to the west. Is that correct?
Yes, I think, I mean, this is at a very high level to give a sense of costing. There's really not much design has been generated on either of these sites, but the concept we wanted to include was that public accessibility would be from the street to the north, and that could be combined with the current main public entry to the parking deck. But the details have not been worked out yet.
Right, thanks, John. Was any thought given to putting a 4-story standalone or 3-story standalone building to the west of the entire parking garage there, where I think the approach ramps are for the main floor? Was any thought to putting up a building at that location rather than inserting it?
No, we felt that that area would be too small when you consider the appropriate footprint for the police building. Spreading it over 3 levels results in a lot of inefficiency in terms of internal adjacencies of spaces, internal communication. So 3 levels is about as far as we would want to spread the building vertically without getting into a number of inefficiencies.
Right.
The
Thanks,
public
John.
floor is the one that needs the most space. It's also important to have vehicle access to the detention area, which ideally should be on the same floor as uniform patrol, which ideally should be on the same floor as the front desk. So there's a lot of pressure to keep all those functions on the same level. Other functions can be distributed up or down as necessary.
Thanks, John. And should we choose a location that is completely separate and apart from Elgin, what's the approximate market value of Elgin as it stands now?
I'm not in a position to answer that, but the figure of $8 million was provided to us, but I have no I have no means of validating or answering that question.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Mr. Chair. CEO Hutchins, maybe?
Yes, if I can through Chair McCreary. We've done a rough high-level estimates based on the size of the lot. It's between $7 to $8 million. $8 million is on the high side, but who knows where this market is right now, but 7 to 8 million.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Brian.
I don't see any other first-time speakers in the queue. So John, I have a couple of questions for you, namely related to your arrangement with City of Brantford. Do I understand that you have a local architect partner?
Yes, we do. Yes.
And what's the nature of your relationship with that partner?
We are the prime consultant. We are the RPL architects hold the contract for services with the City of Brantford. Plus VG Architecture, formerly known as the Benton Group, are a sub-consultant to us to provide local support. Benton or plus VG, there's also an arrangement where they would prepare a certain portion of the construction documents. However, RPL Architects would lead the design phase. Plus VG would also assist the team during the construction phase by being a local presence for construction administration purposes. You
remain responsible for all aspects though, correct?
Correct, correct.
So if there's praise to be had, it's yours. If there's, if we have to get out the pitchforks and nooses, they're yours, that's correct?
Right.
Okay. And the extent of your contract with the City of Brantford, John, are you participating in the construction of the building as well?
No, we will carry out what's known as construction administration.
Okay.
So the contract for construction would be with a general contractor who would hold a contract with the City of Brantford, and our responsibility under the terms of our contract for services and under the terms of the contract for construction under a typical what they call a CCDC2 document, it's a stipulated sum. So we have responsibility to administer that contract between the city and the general contractor.
So your stipulated sum extends into the construction period then, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Do you get 10% of every change order?
No, we do not.
Okay. And would it be, John, would it be your recommendation that the corporation of the City of Brantford engage its own on-site construction manager to oversee our best interests on the project?
That is always a good idea, yes. Whether it's a clerk of works or other similar function.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you again for your presentation. Mayor Davis, second time, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to John. John, can I make one request next time? Can you have some kind of light in front of you? You're like, yeah,
No,
I can't see your face.
Yeah, my office has a lot of sunlight coming in the morning, and even with a ring light, yeah, it's very hard to see me. I apologize for that.
Yeah. Okay. So during the actual construction, is it a fixed sum fee that's paid you, following up on the chair's questions, or is it a percentage of the construction cost?
No, it's a fixed fee, and yeah, we do not get compensated for any changes that are made through construction.
Yeah, and going to some of the questions that Councillor Vanish had asked you, and that's the concept of using the existing parking garage. And your report says costs exclude major rehabilitation of existing parking structure. Like, what's that?
Yes, because we have no detailed knowledge of the condition of the parking structure, its structural condition, potential deterioration due to salt contamination. So until that study is done and we're made aware of that information, we can't have any knowledge of what additional costs there might be over the construction of the new facility.
Right, and so the two concepts you have for the parking garage, I think you may have answered Councillor Vanderstelt, but I didn't quite understand. So does that involve demolishing the current structure down to like bedrock and building up from there, or?
That's what we're assuming, yes, either one side or the other side of the circulation complex in the center.
Right. And then the adjacent parking, whether in the one concept it's to the west and the one it's to the east, would that be, so that would be exclusively retained then for the services of the police service?
That's correct. There may be some public spaces available over and above what would be required for visitor spaces for the police facility, but those areas that are shown in yellow indicate the space that the police would require for their own operational vehicles and for staff vehicles and a small number of visitor vehicles.
Right. So if I understand what you're telling us here, is so you'd have 250 dedicated spaces for the service, 25 for visitors, and then the rest of the parking for the public would be about 100?
I believe that's in the order of the right number. I'm not sure of the exact numbers.
All right. So my question goes to staff. What number of spaces do we need in the parking garage for use by the public and our own staff that park over there?
For police staff?
Well, I don't think you know this. I want to know from our staff, how many parking spots do we need in the parking garage reserved for the public, those who live in the Beckett building, those who park there and use other buildings and go to other buildings there, plus our own staff that park there, city staff?
I'm gonna respond if I can through Mr. Chair. Maybe Indy or Gord can correct me, but my knowledge of this is at the peak we had that the parking garage is over 900 spots, I think 925 spots. At peak, it was at 400 during pre-COVID, and with obviously now with City Hall staff moving in, we're looking at about 5 at peak. This is the worst case at 500 spaces. So that's where we are. So there's another 425 spaces there, which the police need 275 according to the original plan.
So how would we address that need, these concepts? Because in these concepts, they say there'd be 100 spots for anything other than non-police. And I think you're telling me we need at least 500 for that.
We need 500, yes, but I'm not sure. This is the first time I've heard the hundreds on this file, but I thought they'd be knocking out a third. We leave 600 left, and that would be ballpark. We fill the Parkade, but I didn't realize only 100 left.
Yeah, if we got. I think we want to take a look at that. I mean, that's pretty important, I believe.
Mayor, that's time.
Thanks.
I don't see anything else. Oh, sorry, Chairman Littell, go ahead, please.
And I do apologize for getting in there late. I didn't get the link in time, but I appreciate staff sending it to me. I had heard, and maybe this is through to Brian there, that there is an opportunity to build on that. When the garage was built originally, there was the ability to put on a third floor. Does that still exist for the city to do that, and that might add those other spaces?
There's two things. I mean, actually, I would defer this to Mr. Pepper, the technical side of this, and maybe Mr. Hans, the engineer, to respond to this. There's more of a story behind this. So if I can, to Mr. Pepper, Mr. Hans.
I'll take this first, if I may. So through you, Mr. Chair, we have not received or looked at detailed structural information on the existing Parkade structure. So unless we are asked to look at this in a more detailed manner, I'm not in a position to answer that question, yes or no.
So was I correct then in hearing that before, that there was, when we built the parking garage, that there was opportunity to expand it up?
Yeah, again, another thing I'm not sure Mr. Pepper is going to mention, I think if you build on top, it provides also some security issues with things being placed underneath the building, possibly, some security issues, but I'll let Indy speak to building on top on that, your question, Chair Littell. Yes, Board Chair Littell.
Through you, Chair McCreary. So the initial, there is, I guess, history when the the garage was built, that there's a possibility of building over time, but we've had a lot of deterioration in the garage itself, a lot of work and a lot of funding put into renovating it and maintaining it. So Mr. Pepper isn't incorrect that there would need to be more studies done on the structural soundness of the piers and whatnot of that garage, since we've had some deterioration over time. Not to say that it's extensive, but there has been quite a few repairs done to that garage over the years.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chairman Littell. Councilor Martin, go ahead, please. You have the floor.
Thank you. The parking garage options, it looks like either option, we lose about half of the existing structure. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so we're going to lose 450 of the 900 spots, which is going to leave us in a deficit. Through to Indy, would it be possible to put an extra floor on the parking garage that remains for parking instead of trying to put a building up there? Would that be more feasible?
Yes, through you, Chair. Councilor Martin, so that's the report part of this, is that we look into these alternatives further detail and bring a report back to you. So that is something I can take as advisement to go back and ask the consultants to look at, because there's that opportunity to add parking. There's also, we talked a little bit about the green space to the west as well, for possible maybe ground or surface area parking, but we're going to have to look into this a little bit more. This is just high level to just provide some detail of options of where we can, noting the other concerns in the downtown as well. So we can definitely take that under advisement and bring that back as part of the report.
Okay, I really don't see the parking garage as an option for relocating the police station. So I wouldn't recommend doing that work for nothing, but perhaps somebody else would be interested in that. I think we need to reduce the scope of the renovations on the existing building further and get some cost savings that way. Thank you.
Councillor, thank you. Mayor, nice try, but it's not so early in the morning that the chair can't count up to 2 speaking opportunities, which you've already enjoyed. Seeing nothing else, we'll go to the vote on this. Could I ask those in favor to show of hands, please? Show of hands.
Can I ask as clarification, what exactly are we voting on? Can that be shared, please?
Yeah, we're voting on item 5.1, Mayor, which is to direct staff to come back with a report in more detail.
Yeah, can I see the wording of it? I mean, it's early in the morning and I need help.
Mayor, you shouldn't leave that open-ended like that.
Yeah, well, I need all the help I can get. So
okay, there we go. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Receiving in more detail to come.
Yeah. All right.
So that carried. Thank you. We're on to 5.2. And that is the terms of reference with respect to the actions of this committee. Any comments or questions about the terms of reference? So let me just say this, guys, that Councillor Martin and I have lived this process previously with respect to the Wayne Gretzky Sports Center, and the nature of this steering committee is significantly different from what we see with respect to boards and committees that we're all members on. This steering committee is actually playing an active role in directing this project. And it'll be the members of the committee, the elected and the chair of the board that are the leads, so to speak, on this project, along with our senior staff, of course, in support. So it will be a slightly different critter than most of us are used to working in. So we'll need to be aware of that going forward. And I guess that's my only comment on this. So are there everybody's happy with the terms of reference? Any suggestions for change? Then we shall go to the question. Could I have a show of hands? Those in favor of terms of reference? And that carries. Thank you very much. Now, let's see, where are we in the agenda? No consent, no resolutions, no notices of motion. So I'll thank you all for your participation today and your future participation. Councillor Martin, you're moving the adjournment, are you?
Actually, I just had a question about 5.1. One of the things that it asked for more information on is the 4 options. I'm wondering if we should remove the parking garage option and reduce the work scope of staff if that's not one that should be considered.
Councillor, we've actually already voted on that.
I realize that, but if I should have moved an amendment before we voted on that to remove that option, but I think we should revisit that if others agree with me that that's not an option, then that saves some of the work of staff and the consultant.
So rather than convolute the proceedings today, let's presume that staff just heard that suggestion, okay?
Okay.
All right. Otherwise, notice, reconsider, all that stuff. And I think staff get what you've said, Councillor, okay? Okay, guys? Councillor, sorry, not Councillor Littell. There's really no item to speak to. Chairman,
Can I not ask a question of when the next meeting is? Do we have any parameters set for that?
yes, the meetings will be held bi-weekly or call of the chair, and we have not scheduled another meeting to my knowledge yet.
Thank you, sir.
But Chairman Littell, I think what we'll do is we'll ask staff to develop a regular schedule for meetings. Let me ask at this point if everybody is fine with 0900 on a weekday. I see Councillor Martin nod. Councillor Vanderstel, Mayor, Chairman Littell.
Yes.
Okay, super. So we'll do that. And Mr. Hutchings, I saw your hand go up and then down.
Yes, it's just, and you can call me out of order. This will go to Cal O on Tuesday nights, it's CD or whatever it's called now, CA. And if the amendment Councillor Martin's referring to, that could change that as well on Tuesday night as well. So, but that's another option as well.
You'll notice that I let you complete your remarks before calling you out of order.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, did you catch that finesse? Just saying. We're done, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks
Oh
very
yeah,
much.
really impressed.
Yes.
I move adjournment, Mr. Chair.
We'll see you next time. Thanks.